The Galactic Military Academy floated in the darkness of space like a metal mountain. It was old, very old. For more than 2,000 years, young soldiers from 37 different alien species had come here to learn how to fight. The Academy taught them one thing above all else: control. Never use more force than needed. Never destroy what you could capture. Never kill when you could wound. This was the way of civilized war. The station was called 9, and it was the pride of the Galactic Compact. Thousands of cadets walked its halls at any time. Some had scales, some had fur, some had bodies made of living crystal, some had no bodies at all, just floating clouds of energy held together by ancient technology. They came from worlds scattered across the galaxy, but they all learned the same lessons. War was math. War was calculation. War was about winning with the smallest cost. On the day everything changed, a small human ship docked at the station's main hangar. The cadets gathered to watch. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only joined the Compact 5 years ago, and most aliens still did not know what to think of them. They were small, soft creatures with no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. Their home planet was a death world filled with predators and poison, but they themselves seemed weak. How had they survived? How had they built starships? It was a mystery that many aliens found interesting but not important. The Compact had allowed the humans to send one person to the Academy, not a student, but an observer. Someone to watch and learn how real civilizations fought their wars. The hangar doors opened, and the human walked out. His name was Park. He was 53 years old, with short hair and a face like stone. He was not tall. He was not large. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations except for a small patch on his shoulder that showed his rank, Staff Sergeant. His service record was classified so deeply that even the Academy's commandant could not read most of it. The only detail anyone could see was this: 32 years of continuous combat operations. 32 years. The aliens did not understand what this meant. In their wars, soldiers fought for months, maybe a year or two, then rotated home for long rests. The idea of someone fighting for 32 years without stopping was strange, wrong. Impossible. Walked across the hangar floor. His footsteps were silent. His eyes moved constantly, scanning every corner, every shadow, every face. He walked like something hunting. Commander stepped forward to greet him. Was one of the crystal people. His body was beautiful, made of living blue stone that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. He was tall and proud, a veteran of 3 campaigns and the Academy's senior tactical instructor. He looked down at the small human with polite disdain. Staff Sergeant Park said, "Welcome to 9. We understand that humans are new to organized warfare. You are here to observe our methods. Perhaps you will learn something useful to take back to your people." Looked up at the crystal alien. His face showed nothing. "Perhaps," he said. Waited for more, but nothing came. The human simply stood there, watching, waiting. It was unsettling. Most species filled silence with words. Humans, it seemed, did not. "I will show you to your quarters," said finally. "Tomorrow, you may observe our first-year tactical courses." They walked through the station's corridors. Cadets stopped and stared at the human. A group watched him pass. They were huge creatures, 4-legged and heavily armored, built like living tanks. Each one weighed as much as a small vehicle. They could crush the human without effort, but something in the way moved made them step back as he passed. A young name stood near the corridor wall and watched the human go by. There were telepaths. They could feel the emotions of others like normal people felt heat or cold. Was a cadet instructor, young but talented, and she was curious about the human. She reached out with her mind, just a gentle touch, trying to feel what the human was feeling. She found nothing. No, that was not right. She found a wall, a locked door, a vault made of mental iron sealed so tightly that nothing escaped. Behind that vault, something moved. Something paced back and forth like a caged animal. She could not see what it was, but she could feel its weight, its patience, its hunger. Pulled her mind back quickly, her heart beating fast. She had touched the minds of 1,000 different creatures in her life. She had never felt anything like this. The human paused. Slowly he turned his head and looked directly at her. His eyes were brown and very calm. He knew. He had felt her touch his mind, and he knew exactly what she had found there. He nodded once, very slightly, and then continued walking. Stood frozen in the corridor for a long time after he was gone. She thought about the vault in his mind. She thought about what might be locked behind it. She thought about 32 years of continuous combat, and she wondered what kind of creature could survive such a thing. She did not know it yet, but she would find out soon. They all would. Because war was coming to 9, not the clean, calculated war the Academy taught, something older, something worse, something the galaxy had forgotten existed. And Park had not come to learn. He had come to teach. 3 weeks passed. Park watched everything and said nothing. Every morning he sat in the back of the lecture halls while instructors taught the cadets about measured response. This was the heart of compact military doctrine. The rules were simple. First, identify the threat level. Second, match your response exactly to that level. Third, minimize damage to everything around you. Fourth, always leave your enemy a way to surrender. War was expensive. Dead enemies could not pay taxes or provide labor. Destroyed cities could not produce goods. The goal was not to win. The goal was to win cheaply. The cadets loved these lessons. They ran simulations where they had to defeat enemies while causing the smallest amount of damage. Points were given for efficiency. Points were taken away for excessive force. A cadet who killed 10 enemies when 5 would have been enough received a failing grade. A cadet who destroyed a bridge instead of capturing it was sent back to repeat the course. Watched all of this. His face never changed. He never asked questions. He never offered opinions. He simply sat and observed like a man watching animals in a zoo. The instructors did not like him. They felt judged, though he never said a judging word. Commander tried several times to draw him into debates about tactics, but only gave short answers that led nowhere. "What do you think of our approach to urban warfare?" asked one day. "It is very organized," said. "And effective, yes. For certain kinds of enemies." Waited for more. Nothing came. The Crystal Commander's frustration grew each day, but he could not find anything specific to complain about. The human was polite. He followed all rules. He caused no problems. He was simply there, watching, waiting. The cadets were more curious than angry. They had never met a human before and was strange in ways they could not explain. He moved differently than other species. When he walked, he made no sound. When he sat, he positioned himself with his back to the wall and a clear view of all exits. When he ate, he finished quickly and always watched the room while chewing. These were small things, but the cadets noticed them. Noticed more than the others. She was still thinking about the vault she had felt in his mind. Several times she tried to sense his emotions again, but the result was always the same. Nothing escaped that mental wall. Whatever lived inside Park, he kept it locked away from the world. One evening she found him alone on the observation deck. The deck was a large room with windows that looked out into space. Stars filled the darkness, countless points of light scattered across the black. Stood at the window, his hands clasped behind his back, staring at nothing. "You disapprove of our methods," said. It was not a question. Did not turn around. "Your methods are efficient. But they are designed for a certain kind of war. Wars between rational actors. Wars where both sides want something other than destruction." Moved closer. "What other kind of war is there?" Now turned. His brown eyes met her silver ones. The kind where efficiency does not matter. The kind where one side does not want to negotiate. The kind where surrender is not accepted. "Such wars do not exist in the compact," said. "All civilized species follow the conventions." "Then you are lucky," said. Humanity was not so lucky. Wanted to ask more, but she never got the chance. At that moment, Every alarm on the station began to scream. Red lights flashed. Emergency announcements filled every corridor. His communicator exploded with messages. She read them with growing horror. The hegemony had launched an attack. Not a small raid, not a border dispute. A full invasion across 17 star systems. Their fleet was burning through compact defenses like fire through dry grass, and one branch of that fleet was heading directly for 9. They were not a major power. The Compact had always considered them a minor problem, a species of brutal warriors who occasionally raided border worlds. They had never been a real threat, but now they had gathered their full strength, and they were coming. "How long?" asked the passing officer. 6 hours, the officer said. His face was pale, maybe less. 6 hours. Looked at. The human had not moved. He was still standing at the window, watching the stars with the same calm expression he always wore. "Are you not concerned?" she asked. "I am always concerned," said. "That is how I have stayed alive. The Academy fleet will defend us. We have protocols for this." Finally turned away from the window. He looked at, and for just a moment she saw something shift behind his eyes. The vault was still closed, but something inside it was waking up. "Tell me," he said softly, "in your simulations, in your training, in all your years of study, has anyone ever taught you what to do when the enemy does not want to win, when they only want you dead?" Did not answer. She did not know what to say. Nodded as if her silence was answer enough. "Then you are about to learn." The fleet arrived in 4 hours, not 6. They came out of faster-than-light travel like wolves bursting from the forest. 30 warships, each one built for only one purpose: killing. Their ships were ugly things, covered in weapons and armor with no grace and no beauty. They did not care about elegance. They cared about destruction. The Academy Defense Fleet moved to intercept them. 12 ships, well-trained crews, modern weapons. Commander watched from the station's command center as his forces engaged the enemy. He was confident. The Compact had better technology, better tactics, better discipline. There were savages who fought with rage instead of strategy. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, every Compact ship was dead or dying. They had lost 8 vessels, but they did not seem to care. They simply reformed their fleet and continued toward the station. Stared at the tactical display with disbelief. This was not possible. They should have retreated after losing so many ships. Any rational enemy would cut their losses and withdraw, but they were not retreating. They were accelerating. "They are not following standard engagement doctrine," one of the tactical officers said. His voice was shaking. "They are ignoring acceptable loss ratios." "Then what are they doing?" demanded. Park stepped forward from the back of the room. He had been watching silently as always. Now he spoke. "They are coming to kill you," he said. "All of you. They do not want your station. They do not want prisoners. They do not want negotiation. They want extinction." Turned on him angrily. "That is absurd. No species fights that way. It makes no strategic sense." "It makes perfect sense," said. "If your goal is terror, if you want the galaxy to fear you, if you want everyone to know that fighting them means death, not defeat." Before could respond, the station shook. They had begun their bombardment, shields held but barely. Warning lights flashed across every console. Made his decision quickly. "Begin evacuation. All cadets to the transport ships. We will withdraw to the secondary staging area." It was the correct choice according to Compact doctrine. Preserve trained personnel. Abandon fixed assets that could be replaced. Fight another day. Felt proud of his calm response to the crisis. The evacuation began. 200 cadets ran to the hangar bays where transport ships waited. They were scared but orderly. Their training held. They moved in neat lines toward the ships that would carry them to safety. The first transport launched. It cleared the hangar, accelerated toward open space, and then exploded. They had positioned a destroyer specifically to watch the escape routes. The second transport met the same fate, then the third. Watched the explosions on his tactical display. His crystal body began to crack under stress, thin lines appearing across his perfect blue surface. This was not supposed to happen. Enemies were supposed to allow retreats. Enemies were supposed to accept surrenders. Enemies were supposed to follow the rules. They followed no rules. With the escape routes closed, the cadets were trapped. 200 young soldiers from a dozen different species, stuck on a dying station with an enemy that wanted nothing but their deaths. And then the boarding parties arrived. Drop pods slammed into the station's outer hull like metal fists. Dozens of them, each carrying a squad of warriors. The creatures burst through airlocks and maintenance hatches, pouring into the station like poison into a wound. They were terrifying. They stood 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like black iron. Their faces were flat and featureless except for their mouths, which were filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. They did not carry guns. They carried blades and claws and pure savage strength. They wanted to kill up close. They wanted to see the fear in their victims' eyes. The station's security teams engaged them. They died. They were not just strong. They were fearless. They charged into gunfire without hesitation. They ignored wounds that would kill other species. They kept coming and coming until nothing was left alive. Commander stood frozen in the command center. Every scenario he had trained for, every tactic he had learned, every simulation he had run assumed a rational enemy. They were not rational. They were annihilation given form. Commander said, his voice was calm, "You need to move, now." Turned to look at him. The Crystal Commander's eyes were wide with something he had never felt before, pure, absolute terror. "Our protocols," he whispered, "our doctrine." "We'll get everyone killed," stepped closer. "Your doctrine works against enemies who want something. They want nothing except your death. Your rules mean nothing to them." "Then what do we do?" The question came from a young cadet who had pushed her way into the command center. She was massive, 4-legged, covered in natural armor. She was the best tactical student in her year, and she was looking at the human with desperate hope. Turned to face her. For the first time since arriving on the station, something changed in his expression. The vault in his mind was still closed, but something behind it was pressing against the door. Something old, something terrible, something that had been waiting for this moment. "Forget everything you have learned," he said. "Right now, all of it. The rules about proportional response, the calculations about acceptable losses, the respect for enemy infrastructure. Forget it all." "But that is everything we know," said. Looked at her, at who had appeared beside at the other cadets gathering in the corridor outside, at Commander still frozen with fear. "Then you will learn something new," the human said. "You will learn what war actually is. What happened next would be remembered for 1,000 years." Park took command. Not officially. Commander was still alive, still technically in charge. But the crystal alien could not move, could not think, could not do anything except stare at the screens showing warriors tearing through his station. So simply stepped forward and began giving orders, and everyone followed. He did not fight like the cadets had been taught. He did not calculate acceptable losses. He did not worry about preserving infrastructure. He looked at the station and saw weapons everywhere. "The atmospheric vents," he said to a group of engineers. "You can control them from here." "Yes, but what?" "Seal sections 12 through 18, then vent all the air." The engineers stared at him. Venting atmosphere was against every protocol. It would destroy valuable equipment. It would damage the station's systems. "There are 40 in those sections," said. "They will suffocate in 3 minutes. Do it now." They did it. 40 died gasping for air, their iron-hard bodies useless against the empty vacuum. Turned to the cadets. These massive 4-legged creatures had been trained for defensive operations, for holding positions and absorbing damage. He looked at them differently. The central corridor is narrow, he said. Narrow enough that they can only come at you two at a time. You will stand there. You will not retreat. You will not surrender. You will kill everything that comes through that corridor until I tell you to stop. The young tactical genius stepped forward. For how long? Until they stop coming or you stop breathing. It was brutal. It was terrible. It was exactly what the situation required. They took their position. They came. For 3 hours the corridor became a slaughterhouse. They were built like living tanks, and in that narrow space their strength was unstoppable. Warriors threw themselves forward again and again. Warriors died again and again. The floor became slippery with blood. But was not just fighting defensively, he was hunting. He gathered a group of the most athletic cadets, species who could move fast and quiet, joined this group without being asked. She wanted to understand. She wanted to see what lived behind the vault in his mind. They moved through maintenance tunnels, through air ducts, through spaces too small for them to follow. They found isolated groups of the enemy and killed them in the darkness. Not cleanly, not quickly. Made sure each death was loud and painful. He wanted the screams to echo through the station. Why? Asked after watching him kill a warrior with a broken pipe. The creature had taken a long time to die. Why make them suffer? His face was covered in alien blood. His eyes were calm as still water. Because the ones behind us are listening. They are hearing their brothers die. They are starting to wonder what is waiting in the darkness. You want them afraid. Fear is a weapon, the best weapon. A frightened enemy makes mistakes. A frightened enemy hesitates, and in that moment of hesitation you kill them. Finally understood. She reached out with her telepathy, not toward but toward the. She felt their emotions, and for the first time since the battle began, she felt something other than rage and hunger. She felt fear. They were becoming afraid. The cadets became weapons of terror, showed them how to use their telepathy in ways their teachers had forbidden. They pushed images of death and pain into minds. They made the warriors see their fallen comrades everywhere. They filled the enemy's thoughts with shadows and screaming. Though with their crystalline bodies were positioned near emergency lights. When warriors approached, the lights activated, and they focused the beams through their crystal forms. The light became blinding, burning, a wall of pure white pain that let other cadets strike at helpless enemies. Every species found a new purpose. Every rule was broken. The station's own systems became instruments of death. Gravity generators created crushing zones that pulped bodies against walls. Fire suppression systems flooded corridors with foam that hardened like concrete, trapping warriors in place. Even the cleaning robots were, their small forms used to carry explosives into positions. Was everywhere. He directed operations from the command center, then appeared in the front lines, then vanished into the maintenance tunnels, then emerged behind enemy positions. He never seemed to rest. He never seemed to slow. He moved through the battle like something that belonged there, like violence was his natural home. 12 hours passed. The station was a ruin. Fires burned in a dozen sections. Bodies littered every corridor. The air smelled of blood and smoke and fear. But the cadets were still alive. Not all of them. 37 had fallen. But the rest were still fighting, still standing, still refusing to die. And they were breaking. Not physically. They were still strong, still dangerous, still numerous. But something had changed in them. They moved more slowly now. They checked corners before advancing. They flinched at shadows and sounds. The screaming confidence that had carried them onto the station was gone. In its place was something they had never felt before. Doubt. The commander, watching from his ship, could not understand what was happening. His warriors had conquered 100 worlds. They had never failed. They had never retreated. But now, on this small station, something was killing them. Not just their bodies, but their will. He ordered a withdrawal. Just temporary, just to regroup and reassess. But everyone knew the truth. They were running away. And in the ruined command center of Station 9, surrounded by exhausted cadets and piles of alien dead, Park finally allowed himself to sit down. The vault in his mind was still closed, but whatever lived behind it was satisfied, at least for now. The lesson was complete. The fleet at dawn, station time, not defeated in the traditional sense. They still had enough ships to destroy 9-10 times over, but they left anyway, their warriors returning to their drop pods, their warships turning away into the darkness of space. They did not understand what had happened. They had come expecting an easy slaughter. They had found something else, something that fought without rules, without mercy, without the civilized restraint that made other species predictable. Something that turned their own tactics against them and made them feel, for the first time in their history, like prey instead of predators. Stood at the observation deck window, watching the ships disappear into faster-than-light travel. Her silver skin was stained with blood and ash. Her mind was exhausted from hours of projecting terror into enemy thoughts. She had done things that her teachers said were impossible. She had done things that her teachers said were wrong, and she was alive because of it. Behind her, the surviving cadets were gathering, 163 of them out of the original 200. By Galactic Compact standards, this was a disaster. Losing 18% of your forces was considered a catastrophic failure. Commanders had been stripped of rank for smaller losses. But by the standards of what they had faced, by the standards of an enemy that wanted only their extinction, it was a miracle. They should all be dead, every single one of them. They did not take prisoners. They did not accept surrenders. They should have killed them all and burned the station to atoms. Instead, the cadets were alive, injured, traumatized, changed forever, but alive. Commander found Park in the ruined hangar bay. The human was sitting alone among the wreckage of destroyed ships and broken bodies. He looked exhausted. For the first time since arriving on the station, he looked his age. His crystal body was covered in cracks now, the physical evidence of stress and fear that would take months to heal. He approached the human slowly, carefully, like approaching a dangerous animal. "Sergeant Park," he said, "what you did here, our laws, our treaties, our conventions. There will be inquiries, tribunals. The council will demand answers." "I know," said he. Did not look up. "You used prohibited tactics. You weaponized station systems in ways that are specifically forbidden. You directed cadets to cause unnecessary suffering to enemy combatants. The council could charge you with war crimes." "I know." Spread his crystalline hands in confusion. "Then how can you be so calm? Do you not understand the consequences?" Finally raised his head. His brown eyes met the commander's silver ones. "I understand consequences better than you ever will. I have spent 32 years learning about consequences. Every decision I have ever made has had consequences measured in blood and screaming and dead friends." He stood slowly, his joints creaking from exhaustion. "But your cadets are alive, Commander. The ones you were ready to abandon to a clean, legal, proper death according to your precious protocols. They are alive because I taught them something your academy never could." "And what is that?" asked. "That survival is not about what you are allowed to do. It is about what you are willing to do." Began walking toward the exit, stepping carefully around the debris. "They will not stop after today. They will remember what happened here. They will be more careful next time, more prepared. And someday, somewhere, you will face them again or something like them." He paused at the door and looked back at the Crystal Commander. "Your doctrine of measured response works against civilized enemies, against enemies who want something other than your death. But the universe is not civilized, Commander. Sooner or later, every species meets an enemy that will not negotiate, will not surrender, will not stop until everything they hate is destroyed." "And what then?" asked quietly. "Then you discover what you really are, what lives inside you beneath all the rules and protocols and civilized pretending." His voice was soft, tired, and terribly certain. Humans discovered this a long time ago, before we built cities, before we invented writing, before we ever looked up at the stars. We learned that the universe does not care about rules or fairness or acceptable losses. It only respects one thing. What? Those who refuse to die. Walked away into the ruined station, leaving standing alone among the wreckage. The next 10 years brought many changes. The Galactic Compact quietly revised its military doctrine. The Academy still taught measured response, still emphasized restraint and calculation and civilized warfare. But a new course appeared in the curriculum. It was called Asymmetric Survival Tactics, and it was taught only by human instructors. Cadets whispered about what happened in those classes. Some refused to take the course at all. Others emerged changed, with shadows in their eyes that had not been there before. Became the first non-human to complete Terran Special Operations training. It nearly killed her. It taught her things about herself that she sometimes wished she did not know. When others asked why she had chosen such a brutal path, she would remember a man with a locked vault for a mind and answer simply, "Because I met someone who showed me that control is a luxury, and survival is a choice." Staff Sergeant Park was never charged with war crimes. His record remained classified. He returned to Earth and disappeared into whatever shadows humans kept their warriors in. Some said he died. Some said he was still out there, still hunting, still teaching. The cadets who survived 9 never spoke publicly about what they had done that night. The memories were too raw, too personal, too terrible. But they carried the lessons with them for the rest of their lives. They taught their own students who taught their students, and slowly, quietly, the galaxy began to change. It learned what humans had always known: that in the darkness between the stars, there are things that do not follow rules, things that do not negotiate, things that want only destruction. And the only answer to such things is to become something they fear. Not through technology, not through numbers, not through clever tactics and calculated responses. Through will, through fury, through the absolute refusal to accept death. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. This was the lesson they delivered. And the universe would never be the same.